Okay, are we recording and live streaming? I guess we are.
Yes.
I'd like to welcome you to, and call the order the December 12th, 2023 Port Orchard City Council regular meeting. With Mayor Patanzu not in attendance, as Mayor Pro Temp, I will be presiding over tonight's meeting. Before we begin, let's review our guiding principles. In the actions we are about to take, are we raising the bar? Are we honoring the past but not living in the past? Are we building connections with outside partners? Is the decision-making process positively impacting diversity, equity, and inclusion? Please join me and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. So the first item on our agenda is the approval of the agenda. Do we have any modifications?
Mayor Pro Tem, I'd like to excuse Councilmember Cucciardi for business reasons from tonight's meeting.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion and second to excuse Councilmember Cucciardi for business reasons, and I guess that would go to item L on the consent agenda. Okay, do we have to vote on that one?
Yes.
Suppose we do.
Yes, a second by Scott.
So we have a motion and a second. All in favor in that change, please say aye.
Aye.
Any against or opposed? All right, so we've added Sean to. We're at our first citizens' comment.
No, we have to approve the agenda.
Oh,
We only amended it.
that's true. Now we have an amended agenda. Can I have a motion to approve it? Councilmember Clausen.
Mayor Pro Tem, I move that we approve the agenda as modified.
Second.
Got an approval, or we've got my gosh, we've got a motion, and we've got a second on that motion to approve the agenda as amended. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, now the agenda's approved. So now we're at our first citizens' comment section. Is there anybody online? I see no one here in the audience this afternoon, this evening. So do we have anybody online, Janine?
We have one person attending and they have not yet raised their hand.
Okay. Well, this comment section is for anything that's on the agenda. And since I see no one in the audience and we don't have a hand raised, we're going to go ahead and close that citizen comment section. We will have another comment section for items not on the agenda. And of course, we've got two public hearings this evening that will be allowed comments for those items as well later on in today's meeting. So we move next to our consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, I make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion to approve the consent agenda from Councilmember Diener and a second from Councilmember Rosa Pepe. Any discussion on that topic? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I don't hear any. So the consent agenda is approved. Moving along, we have no presentation tonight. So the next item on our agenda is the public hearing. We have two public hearings tonight. The first one will be in regards to an amendment to the POMC Chapter 13.06 to update the rates for stormwater utility and establish a capital facilities charge and connection inspection fees for storm drainage. Mr. Ryan, I believe this is you.
Thank you. Good evening. Just to note before we start with this, the ordinance that accompanies this topic had a slight revision, so the effective date would be the start of the second quarter of the 2024, so April 1. So the city first established a storm drainage utility in 2008. In 2021, Herrera Environmental Consultants was retained to assist in the development of the city of Port Orchard's first stormwater and watershed comprehensive plan. Over the past 2 years, Port Orchard and Herrera have been in the process of preparing the plan. The city has reviewed and discussed the stormwater shed comprehensive plan with this council on September 12th, 2023, November 21st, 2023. On November 28th, 2023, the city adopted this plan by resolution. In coordination with the 2023 Stormwater and Watershed Comp Plan, the city reviewed storm drainage requirements and needed capital improvements and considered levels of service. Level 1 represented activities needed to meet the 2019-2024 NPDES permit requirements for stormwater, potential future permit requirements, and essential program activities. Level 2 service included everything that is listed in Level 1 and several additional improvements to expand public education and stewardship opportunities, implement the new asset management program, and increase staffing to more thoroughly inspect construction projects and private stormwater facilities to improve environmental protection. Level 3 includes everything in levels 1 and 2 listed and represents staffing and funding to move forward to achieving the city's goals. The level of service would result in the greatest benefits for the community and environment, but would have the highest cost. Level 3 includes expanding public involvement in environmental monitoring activities. On November 21st, 2023, Council gave staff direction to present rates and charges to fund level of service 2. Implementation of these rates changes the fees required and requires amendment of Chapter 13.06 of the Port Orchard Municipal Code, Storm Drainage Utility. The attached ordinance updates the rates at level of service 2 and adopts the capital facility charge at this same level. In addition, standard inspection fees are added to the code. And I'm happy to answer any questions if there might be any.
Okay, thank you for that. With that, we will open the public hearing. Seeing no one in attendance, Janine, do we have anybody online?
No, we do have one person, but they have not raised their hand.
Thank you. Any comments, questions from the council in regards to this?
Pick that up at the next discussion.
Okay, so seeing no testimony, I'll go ahead and close the public meeting on this topic. And moving on to our second public hearing is an ordinance amending the POMC 20.132.270 temporary sign ordinance. Mr. Bond.
Yes, good evening. Before the City Council tonight is a public hearing on an ordinance amending Port Orchard Municipal Code Section 20.132.270 temporary signs. The existing regulations as outlined in Port Orchard Municipal Code 20.132.270 currently permit the placement of temporary signage within the public right-of-way outside of the roadway, provided that it adheres to the regulations set forth therein. In response to the noticeable increase in the number of temporary signs within the right-of-way in recent years and the associated safety concerns, the City Council tasked the Planning Commission with conducting a thorough review, study, and making recommendations regarding temporary signs. Following a comprehensive review and deliberation, on October 3rd, 2023, the Planning Commission conducted a public hearing on the proposed amendments to Chapter 20.132 concerning temporary signs in the public right-of-way. No comments were received before, during the hearing. After a hearing, the Planning Commission recommended approval of the ordinance introducing location criteria for temporary signs. In summary, the recommended amendments stipulate that temporary signs must be positioned along major transportation corridors at least 50 feet away from intersections and accessible by improved pedestrian facilities. Following the Planning Commission's recommendation, staff presented additional criteria clarifying and simplifying the implementation of the regulations. Specifically, the additional edits allow for mapping eligible areas based on street centerline data and establishing an infield measurement system which would allow enforcement officers to remain outside of the traveled ways. Additionally, the amendments recognize the potential danger that may arise from temporary signs as they relate to fully autonomous and semi-autonomous vehicle technology. During the City Council work study session on November 21st, 2023, the City Council directed staff to proceed with an ordinance that incorporates the additional edits. While these edits align closely with the Planning Commission's recommendation, they do introduce additional regulations focused on safety and implementation. Notably, these additional edits necessitate an additional public hearing due to their divergence from the Planning Commission's initial recommendations. Public notice for the December 12, 2023 public hearing was provided consistent with the requirements of POMC 20.25 and was posted on November 28, 2023. The city has not yet received any public comments up to this point, and the staff recommendation is to conduct a public hearing on the proposed ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. Bond. With that, we will open the public hearing. And seeing no one in attendance, Janine, is there anybody online that would wish to testify?
No hands are raised at this time.
Okay, with that, we will close the public hearing on this topic. And with that, we're moving on to our business items. Business item 7A is an adoption of an ordinance amending POMC 20.132, the temporary signs. Mr. Bond.
The presentation of the temporary sign ordinance should be pretty fresh in your head, so I won't repeat it. The staff recommendation is to approve an ordinance amending Port Orchard Municipal Code Section 20.132.270 as presented.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, I move to adopt an ordinance amending Port Orchard Municipal Code 20.132.270 as presented.
Seconded.
Got a motion by Councilmember Diener and a second by Councilmember Clausen. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Chang.
I have a question for Charlie. In the first whereas, the word police just seemed awkward to me. Is this normal wording that we use?
Let me get to that real quick.
Because it doesn't refer to the police department, and I was wondering if maybe it should have been policing.
The whereas it reads, it is within the city's police power to regulate city rights of way.
Yeah.
Okay. Police power and the city's police powers is a term of with legal significance. And so it's not a power vested with the police department. It is within your police powers that are vested to the city through the state constitution. So it's a correct phrasing.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other discussion points? Councilman Rosa Pepe.
Just wanted to, I know we had discussed this several times at council and also at one of our work studies, but I just wanted to reiterate that the main reason we're doing this is for public safety. That we've had numerous complaints from citizens about the plethora of signage interfering with traffic regulations. This doesn't stop anybody from putting it on their own personal property signage. So, I think it's very open, but it's for the public safety that we're doing this. I did have a question for Nick. We had a, lack of better words, kind of a picture guide about on that. Would that be available to any citizen, or we put online?
Are you talking about the pictures of existing signs and documenting the problem, or are you talking about a guide for where you can put signs in the future?
In the future.
Yes, we'd like to put together that sort of guide. It'll probably happen after the first of the year.
Great.
And I would imagine that before we start pulling signs from the right of way, we're going to do a little bit of outreach and let people know that the rules have changed, and we're going to start removing signs. And I'll actually be out on vacation the first part of January, so it'll probably happen mid-January.
It's fine. I just was wondering that we'd be doing that to keep people informed. And thank you very much for your work on this.
Yeah, and in addition, we do, there is a voter's guide for candidates, and so candidates often put up temporary signs, and so I will make sure to let the county know, because they publish that document, that our rules have changed, and I'll give them the updated references to the code.
Super.
Councilmember Diener.
So, Nick, thank you, and thanks to the Planning Commission for their work on this. I know that it's a safety issue, but it's also an appearance issue to me as well, and I know that this will take care of both those issues, and I really appreciate the work that's been done on this. Nick, when you talk about outreach, are you going to reach out to each of the sign owners that you have come across, and is that the kind of outreach you're looking at?
I don't know that we've determined that, but I was thinking more along the line of just Facebook posts and just saying that we're going to be doing this enforcement under the new code, and just letting people know that changes are coming, and hopefully getting the word out that way. It's probably possible, if the owner of a sign can be reached, that we can let them know that the rules have changed, and that they can pick up their signs. We're going to store them up at the Public Works Yard for 7 days before we would dispose of them.
Okay. Thank you very much again for your work on this. I really appreciate it.
Any other points of discussion? All right, seeing none, we have a motion by Councilmember Diener and a second by Councilmember Chang. Can I call for a vote? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. That ordinance passes, an amendment passes. We're to item 7B, the adoption of an ordinance amending POMC Chapter 13.06 to update rates for the stormwater utility and establish capital facility charges and connection/inspection fees for storm drainage. Mr. Ryan.
Thank you. To recap the topic of the stormwater utility and capital improvement fee. In coordination with the 2023 Stormwater and Watershed Comp Plan, the city reviewed storm drainage requirements and needed capital improvements and considered level of service that would best serve the community and identified level 2. Presented rates and capital facilities charges to fund level 2 have been provided. Implementation of these rates, changes, and fees requires amendments to Chapter 13.06 of the Port Orchard Municipal Code under storm drainage utility. The attached ordinance updates the rates at level 2 of service level 2 and adopts the capital facility charge at the same level. Staff recommends the City Council approve an ordinance to implement changes to the storm drainage utility code consistent with the recently adopted 2023 Stormwater and Watershed Comprehensive Plan, including choosing level 2 service to use for the setting these rates and fees. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Councilmember Lucarelli.
I move to adopt an ordinance relating to the storm drainage rates and capital facility charges, amending Port Orchard Municipal Codes, Section 13.06.100, to update storm drainage rates through 2028, adding new sections 13.06.150 and 13.06.160 to the POMC to adopt a storm drainage capital facilities charges and inspection fees, providing for severability and corrections, and establishing an effective date.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilperson Lucarelli and a second by Councilperson Diener. Is there any discussion on this item? Councilmember Diener.
Yeah, I think we worked through this pretty well and in a lot of detail, and we realized that there were some bookends on this, one being status quo and one being more of a higher model of stormwater management and fees, and we opted to go to the middle for that. So I think that's a reasonable approach, while also helping to capture the fees that we needed for our capital costs of maintaining stormwater facilities. So I think this was a very reasonable process and well thought out. So thank you to staff.
Anybody else? I would just like to chime in with a thought of my own. It's been about 8.5 years since the citizens received any kind of an increase in our stormwater rates. I don't like raising rates at any time, but with the increases of the federal requirements, I think this is necessary, and I think this is the best choice that we possibly could make at this point for this. So I'm happy that this is the choice we've made as well. Anyone else? All right, so we've got a motion and a second. Those all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Seeing none, that ordinance adoption passes. We're to item 7C, first reading of an ordinance approving a franchise agreement with the City of Bremerton. Mr. Bond.
Yes, good evening. The City of Port Orchard annexed the area, generally the McCormick Woods area, including McCormick North, West, and Woods. And everything north of Old Clifton Road is served by the City of Bremerton water utility. After annexation, we never pursued the negotiation of a franchise agreement with the City of Bremerton. And so as we've gone through a lot of growing pains and communication with Bremerton as development has occurred in this area, it became apparent that a franchise agreement was needed. And so staff from the City of Bremerton and the City of Port Orchard began negotiating a franchise agreement. And it's a very typical agreement and includes requirements for repair of pavement when they have to make road cuts, and outlines the permitting requirements. It outlines planning coordination requirements between the two agencies for water infrastructure, and generally lays out the things that are typical of a franchise agreement. Franchise agreements under state law do require 2 readings, and so the recommendation tonight is just to hold the first reading of the ordinance, and then adoption can occur on December 19th. And I'm not sure that you'll have any questions about this, but obviously with a week in between now and when the adoption would occur, if there are any questions we can't answer tonight, we're happy to follow up afterwards. But if you have questions now, I'm happy to try to answer those.
Are there any questions at this time? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and move on to item D. Thank you, Mr. Bond. Item D, approval of amendments number 2 to contract number 048-23 with Lincoln with Construction, Inc. for the City Hall renovations project. Mr. Ryan, this is you.
Thank you. The Port Orchard City Hall facility was constructed in 1999. Through the years, weather, normal wear and tear, and increased staffing have triggered the need to update and renovate the building. In 2020, following a competitive bidding selection process, a consultant was hired to determine the current and future needs of the building and prepare a design for the needed building renovations. The result of the consultant's work determined the need and proposed scope of the City Hall renovation project. On May 23, 2023, following a procurement process consistent with state law and the city's procurement policies adopted by resolution as amended, the city executed contract with Lincoln Construction Incorporated for the project. Change order number 1, approved on October 11, 2023, captured revisions and adjustments to the renovation. Change order 2 is to address the increase of the strong girt system, which is continuous cladding. If you think of the framing of the building, it's increasing from, it was realized that it was 16-inch on center, and we had designed for 24-inch on center, if that's making sense. The increased stronger system from 24 to 16 is to provide additional wind loading, doubling the screws needed for the attachment, and to change the stainless steel hex washer head drilling system. This would increase the contract as amended by $101,188.85 for a new contract total of $9,163,412.13. Staff recommends that the City Council authorize the mayor to execute change order number 2 to the contract number 048-23 with Lincoln Construction Incorporated for the City Hall renovations project to increase the contract as amended by $101,188.85 for a new contract total of $9,163,412.13. I'm happy to provide further clarification.
Councilmember Clausen.
Mayor Pro Tem, I move to authorize the mayor to execute change order number 2 to contract number 048-23 with Lincoln Construction Incorporated for the City Hall renovation project to add an amount of $101,188.85 for a new contract total of $9,163,412.13, applicable taxes included.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Clausen and a second by Councilmember Rosapepe on this topic. Is there any discussion or questions? Councilmember Diener.
So I think when we talked about this at work study, we just realized this is one of those things that we didn't know about until we got into it, and so that's what necessitated this. But at the end of the meeting tonight, for director's update, if we could get just a status update on the project overall, that'd be great.
Any other comments or discussion on this? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the amendment to contract number 2 or contract number 04823 with Lincoln Construction for the City Hall renovations, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, that amendment passes. We're to item 7E, adoption of a resolution approving an interlocal agreement with Kitsap Transit for the Ruby Creek Lift Station Sewer Project. Mr. Ryan, you are on board again.
Before you start.
Councilmember Clausen?
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, since I'm employed by Kitsap Transit and the signator on this agreement, I'm going to recuse myself from the discussion.
All right, thank you for that. I appreciate that.
We'll remember to get you, John.
All right, Mr. Ryan, you're up again.
Thank you. Kitsap Transit is constructing a park and ride facility known as the Ruby Creek Park and Ride, which is located within the city of Port Orchard at Southwest Sedgwick Road and Sydney Road Southwest. The project will require Kitsap Transit to construct sewer improvements to support the development, which must be designed and constructed by city standards and will be dedicated to the city once completed. Approved and accepted, Kitsap Transit has requested that the city enter into a latecomer agreement under Chapter 13.08 of the Port Orchard Municipal Code for the sewer improvements once the improvements have been constructed. Kitsap Transit has also requested that the city perform the design work for the sewer improvements and that the cities perform the permitting applications for Kitsap Transit for the sewer improvements. In exchange, Kitsap Transit will reimburse the city for design and permitting costs. Port Orchard and Kitsap Transit each have the legal authority to enter into the design, contracts, design, capital improvements, and apply for permits. Pursuant to the Interlocal Cooperation Act of Chapter 39.34 RCW, public agencies may contract with one another to perform the governmental functions of the service. Staff recommends the City Council adopt a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute the agreement.
Councilmember Rosa Pepe.
Mayor Pro Tem, I move to adopt a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute an interlocal agreement with Kitsap Transit for the Ruby Creek Lift Station Sewer Project.
Second.
Got a motion by Councilmember Rosa Pepe and a second by Councilmember Lucarelli to adopt a resolution approving an interlocal agreement with Kitsap Transit for the Ruby Creek Lift Station Sewer Project. Is there any discussion or questions on this? Councilmember Rosa Pepe.
Several years ago, when I sat on the board of Kitsap Transit, we had discussions, and I think the council had been notified that there were several places that we were looking at for this park and ride to go. Part of it had been in the industrial area, and finally it was set on that the best place for Kitsap Transit was out at Ruby Creek. So this is just moving those plans forward, and I think it's to the benefit of we're seeing the construction that's going on in that area and the closeness obviously to SR 16. This is a good thing for all involved and part of the project, moving the project forward. So fully supportive of this.
Thank you for that. Anything else?
No, go ahead.
Councilmember Chang.
Yeah, my question is not as well formulated as Jay's. Basically, I was asked by someone if it's customary for the city to do this sort of work for another agency where it appears, where it could appear, that the city is providing staff. And so I guess my question is, if we have had many interlocal type agreements with Kitsap Transit in the recent past, or if this is something really that unusual.
I'm not familiar, I've been here for 2 months, so I'm not familiar with any past agreements with Kitsap directly. I do know in Public Works, working for multiple agencies over the years, it is something I've seen previously. It's under a reimbursable agreement. The interlocal is set up between different municipalities. I have seen design work. The state has requested Port Orchard do similar work. You know, maybe not specifically the exact same, but design services in lieu of. So in the Public Works, and legal counsel might be able to provide some additional context to that.
Yeah, thanks, Dennis. Charlotte Archer, City Attorney, for the record. Yes, this type of interlocal agreement and situation is somewhat common in the state of Washington, and it is authorized by state statute, cooperative work of this ilk. It's not the city subsidizing another agency. It's a city partnering with another agency and that agency compensating for those services. For example, you currently have an arrangement with the Port of Bremerton where you're providing a service and they are paying for it. And as long as that's a public service contemplated by the Interlocal Cooperation Act, then it's sanctioned under the state law.
Thank you.
Member Rosa Pepe.
Just for record, Fred, I've seen this before when I worked with other transit agencies, that we would work with the county or city for them to do work for us, and we would reimburse them in total for it. So it's not unusual, pretty common.
And it is clearly stated in the summary that they are reimbursing the city for all costs for this, so I'm comfortable with that as well.
I would also add that these type of agreements with other agencies does provide some opportunity for efficiencies. The city has the charge of the design team, so it's unlike private development. The city is directing the design and how the project proceeds. So.
Any other questions, comments on this topic? All right, we have a motion by Councilmember Rosa Pepe and a second by Councilmember Lucarelli for an adoption of a resolution approving an interlocal agreement with Kitsap Transit for the Ruby Creek Lift Station Sewer Project. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, that adoption passes.
Good question, Fred.
Can we grab them?
Good question.
Thank you, Dennis.
Yeah, no, it's a good question.
Clear to the public also that it was reimbursement. Yep. Well, welcome back, council member.
Thank you. Nice to be back.
We're moving on to our discussion item. There's not going to be any action taken at this point of time, but we do have an item, an ordinance to amend the 2023-2024 biannual budget, including Exhibit A personnel table. Mr. Crocker.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. I'm just trying to get my screen loaded up here so we can have a discussion. Okay, so what we have tonight is considered the final budget amendment proposal for fiscal year 2023. Normally, we would have brought this to a work study session, but December we do not have a work study session. We only have the 2 meetings, so I'm bringing it forward to discussion. So I'd just kind of like to walk through the budget amendment proposal. We did discuss that at the Finance Committee, and then the Finance Committee might also provide comments as we kind of walk through. So the first budget amendment is for our general fund, current expense fund 001. We are proposing to increase expenditures going out of the fund of $29,000 to go pay for electric charging stations for the Public Works shop. Some of the expenses for that project have come in a little more than we anticipated, and the cost allocation of that project changed as we kind of understood better the cost and the fleet makeup. So another $29,000 for a project that we are nearing completion. We also have a proposal for $67,000 for the Community Events Center, RFM Amendment number 12, to go to Fund 302. And I believe that amendment is going to come forward on the 19th. And I'd just like to pause there and see if Mr. Bond would like to speak to that amendment at all and describe kind of what the purpose of this is for.
Yeah, so the city has 2 lease agreements with DNR. One of them was assigned to us, and it's waterward of the Kitsap Bank building. The other lease is the Marina Lift Station and the parking lot going all the way over to the library. Both of those leases are set to expire in the next 2 years. They have slightly different expiration dates. But what DNR requires in order for us to extend the leases is we have to identify every proposed improvement within that area within the next 5 years. And Obviously, we have our consultants working on designs for the waterfront restoration, the overwater structure, the plaza, the marina lift station, which has already been approved. But we have to give them an exhaustive list of everything that's going to be done. And what we've realized is that we don't have good survey information for the entire lease area that shows which improvements are within our area, which ones are on the Port of Bremerton area associated with the marina lift station, and which ones are on the Port of Bremerton area associated with the marina itself. So part of the scope of work that we need is to actually do some additional survey work down on the waterfront. I think that's going to be about $17,000. The other part of that is that we have to prepare specific exhibits for inclusion in our JARPA application and potentially some additional environmental documentation. We're not totally sure. We've actually, Chris Hammer and Charlie and I worked today on these applications, trying to really understand what information we need. So anyway, we're asking for some additional money for a contract amendment because we need technical assistance and survey work to help extend our DNR leases so that we can build the community center and we can build the plaza. And that's the reason for that amendment. The contract that'll come to you, it's a contract amendment, will be a time and materials, and it's going to be for, what is it, 68,000 you said?
67 is what we have proposed here.
67,000. I don't intend to spend anywhere close to that, but because we don't have time to flesh out all of the details, we need to get the surveyors out there and working, and so we're just asking to authorize the full amount, and we're going to work to reduce the contract as much as possible as we get the application submitted for our lease.
Bond. The effect on the fund is to reduce ending fund balance. We use fund balance to make these amendments. So I'd like to move on to the next fund, our Real Estate Excise Tax Fund 109. As the council is aware, we recently completed our bond sale, and in doing so, we received our bond proceeds into our Fund 302. As a part of this overall financing and plan, we always intended to reimburse ourselves from prior expenses that we cash flowed up until the bond sale. One of the funds that we've used to pay for expenses for this work is Fund 109 REIT 1. So in this amendment, I am proposing to use the bond proceeds to reimburse our Fund 109 fund at REIT 1. The amount is $433,000, and functionally the cash would flow from Fund 302 to our REIT Fund 109 and increasing its fund balance by the end of the biennium. The positive note of this is that our REIT 1 is the one revenue source that was always tight because we have been using it quite heavily, and it's restrictive, of course, but for the 23-24 biennial budget, it was actually budgeted to be zero by the end of the 24 period. Now we'll actually have a budgeted fund balance to use for our other projects. So that's really good, I think, for REIT 1. REIT 2 is a little healthier than REIT 1 just because of the restrictions on them. The next amendment is for our impact fee fund. Again, many of these items are end-of-year housekeeping, accounting type entries. So this is no different. It's an increase from our park impact fee fund 111 to our capital construction fund 302 in the amount of $352,000 for the community events center. And this is to fund the second half of RFM amendment number 7 for construction design work. Again, we've already paid for half of that amendment, and this is now to capture the additional costs that we see coming up here relatively soon. They've actually kind of been progressing at a faster pace than we originally anticipated, and that's why you're seeing this amendment now, and we did not see it at the mid-year review. Again, just a house cleaning item to fully fund a contract and obligation we currently have on the books. We would also reduce our impact fee fund, park impact fees, by the same amount. So now we have our capital construction fund, where now we're going to recognize all these accounting transactions. First, we're going to increase our revenues for bond proceeds. Now that we've closed on the sale and we have the exact amount, so we'll increase, let me see if I can zoom this out. Yes, thank you. We'll increase our bond proceeds amount by $759,000. That'll bring our total revenue for that particular GL line item into balance. Again, we've talked about the $29,000 for the electric charging stations at the Public Works shop, $60,000 for the RFM Amendment No. 12 that Mr. Bond described, the $352,300 for the Community Events Center, And then, of course, the transfer is going out of this fund for the $433,000 of reimbursement from bond proceeds. Now that we have all the revenue into the fund, we also want to provide the expenditure authority to spend it. So that the first one here, item F, is the additional expenditure authority for the City Hall project. Now that we have the full bond proceeds in the fund and our project costs, we know we have another $326,000 we need to allocate for the cost of the project, as well as covering our cost of issuance of the bond sale itself. Again, in the other two items, electric charging stations, the Community Events Center, and Community Events Center. I do want to flip real quick to the income statement. Again, I think that the council has always appreciated this particular graph because it shows the proposed impact on our funds. So again, you can see the $96,000 of additional expenditures going out and reducing fund balance in our general fund, reducing it from $2.723 million to $2.627 million. Our REIT fund, again, you'll see the ending fund balance increase by that $433,000 from $2.3 million to $2.8 million. Our park impact fee fund, a reduction of going from $9.3 million to $8.9 million. And then all the transactions being recognized in our capital construction fund 302, 1.2 million of revenue coming in, 1.2 million expenses going out, so no change to any fund balance. Again, overall, you can see from this graph, this table on from the income statement that our funds are still healthy, and we're doing some, again, like I said, accounting end of year budget cleanup items. That's the meat and potatoes of the budget amendment. There is an update to our Exhibit A, which is our personnel and salary table. Again, from time to time, the city conducts a review of its compensation to its non-represented employees in a salary review and salary survey. And so the city has done that this year. And Table A in the exhibits reflects the proposed change to all the positions. And this goes through a high level of what those would be. First, we're going to adjust the 3 collective bargaining groups by their contractual amounts. So that's pretty straightforward. We'll adjust the non-represented employees by the results of the salary, which include an additional 4% COLA as a part of the total adjustment. And you'll again see the total adjustment in the Exhibit A. The Exhibit A also factors in the council's ordinance number 00923, which had some modifications for as far as timing of pay and future adjustments of council pay. In this amendment, we are actually creating a principal planner position and defunding a senior planner position. We are creating a human resource analyst position and defunding a human resource specialist. All these positions being added and removed, and the salary adjustments will become effective starting the first full pay period of fiscal year 2024, which in this case begins on January 14th. So employees could expect to see a change in their compensation on their February 2nd paycheck. The overall impact on this biennial adjustment is $1.64 million. Again, that's all coming from the specific items we talked about in the funds. The adjustments on the salary benefits table, we have already planned for that in the mid-biennial review. And so it's already built into the budget itself. So there is no budget adjustments for the salary impacts. Again, we budgeted roughly $200,000, and the impact is right around $175,000 for the proposed adjustments. I have provided the council the staff report, ordinance, as well as the salary table. And in front of you have additional information to show the adjustments by position. Again, I think for tonight, I just want to talk about the overall process that we used. For the comparable base, we used the cities in Kitsap County. So we used Bainbridge Island, Bremerton, Paulsbo, and Gig Harbor as our comparable cities. We looked at the current organizational structures in their budgets, and we used their current adopted budget salary tables for 2023, and we aligned their positions with the city's positions here in Port Orchard, our org structures, to ensure that we are being comparable with our review and analysis. From there, we took the average compensation of those comparable cities and compared it to what we currently pay. Once we've arrived at the difference, whether it's up or down, we then applied the 4% COLA to that number, which then results in the final proposed adjustments in the table. So kind of went kind of fast there, kind of slow. Not sure. I hope that made sense. You have all the material there. The intent was to bring this forward next week. Again, normally we do this as a study session, so I thought this was a good opportunity to give the council to kind of review it. If there's any questions on the budget amendment, happy to take it. And if there's any other comments, again, we did present this to the Finance Committee this evening. And I don't know if any of the Finance Committee members have any comments they'd like to add.
I will when we do the committee reports, Noah. Thank you.
If there's no questions, I did want to give Ms. Lund an opportunity to talk about one policy update that is going to be a part of this effort. So I'd like to ask Ms. Lund.
Thank you, Noah. Good evening. Mayor Patoncio asked me to report to you a policy revision that we are working on as a result of this salary study as well. He would normally report this to you, but in his absence, he wanted to make sure you are aware of it before your potential vote next week. We have current policy when we do these kind of salary studies on what we would do if the pay range that you're in is lowered and you were at the top of that range. We have existing policy language that the council adopted that says we freeze your pay until the range catches back up to you. What we realized in trying to look at the actual implementation of this is we did not have language that talked about what we do when the range you're in adjusts and you're still within that range, but you no longer land on one of the established steps on that. And so my analogy is you're walking up a ladder in the pay range. Our pay system is set up with these steps, and all of a sudden the ladder adjusts and you're between steps. You're kind of in no person's land. So our pay system needs you to be on a step. That's how we're set up, and we're not historically in the business of cutting pay. So we're writing policy that identifies what we will do in those cases. And what we would like to do is just put you on the step closest to where you're at now without getting a pay decrease. And for some people, we're talking pennies per hour. For others, it might be a little bit more. But we need everybody on one of the steps of their respective ladders to make the whole system work appropriately. And we have another little oddity that in our step system, if you're at the very bottom or the first rung on that ladder, you only stay there for 6 months. So we want to make sure we incorporate that into our language just to be consistent in how we apply that. So I hope that made sense. Mayor has council authority to modify policy, and that's what his plan is to do to implement this, and we're happy to provide that to you in writing. We're still reading it and rereading it to make sure we've captured every potential situation that we might encounter. Again, happy to answer questions.
Ms. Lund, will this come forward next week? Is it planned to come forward next week as well?
It doesn't actually have to come to council since it's a modification of existing policy. So that's why we wanted to bring it tonight. Otherwise, you wouldn't hear about it till the end of next week's meeting.
Thank you. Anybody else have any comments or questions about this one?
Made sense to me.
Thank you for that discussion and presentation on that. We are to the reports of the council committees, and let's see. Utilities, we're getting towards the end of the year, so we don't have a lot of things scheduled between now and year end. Economic development and tourism is to be determined in 2024. The same with utilities. Finance did meet tonight, though, and Councilmember Rosa Pepe will give us a little rundown, I hope.
It's very, very quick. Noah covered a lot of it, also with Debbie's comments. We reviewed the fund balances. They're all very healthy. We continue to meet our reserve fund targets. So again, this being a biennial budget, it's a very positive. Again, we're a very conservative city in how we spend our funds, so that's good. We also went over the budget amendments that Noah did go through in detail with fund shifting from different funds from one to another. We had a discussion, as we just got briefed, on the salary adjustments. And again, that was brought up, that Debbie brought up about the steps that, you know, if people are positive and if they were on a negative with the survey, and I think that was good policy. I've never seen any company reduce somebody's salary. So, and I would not support that personally. I hope everybody remembers that we did have a firm that we had contracted with to do a salary survey. They were non-responsive. And so I think Noah's team took this on along with, I'm sure, some help from other staff. And they did a very good job with getting this done in a very timely manner. I would also reiterate that we're trying to be very competitive in our hiring, getting good people on board and attracting good people. So I'm fully supportive in the salary increase that it was presented tonight, and will come to council next week. But more importantly, I think we want to get the best people we can into the city, and this helps attracts good people. So that was pretty much we went. Sean was on the call with us. Mark is here. When pressed, Sean, with the salary adjustments, gave one thumbs up, and I asked him if it was a two-thumber, and he gave both thumbs. So he's fully on board also. So I'm willing to take any questions if other council members have any questions. Okay, that's my report.
All right, thank you,
Mr. Mayor Pro
Councilmember.
Tem, just a comment. I was unable to attend the Finance Committee, so I wanted to thank Mark for filling in for me. So thank you, Mark.
It was my pleasure. Okay, thank you for that, Councilmember Rosa Pepe. Transportation is meeting on the 26th at this point.
That's canceled, or will be canceled.
Transportation will be
Will
canceled.
not be
so-
meeting on December 26th.
I think I caught some email traffic that we're looking at February.
Yeah.
Sometime in February?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sure
So
that'll
we're
come
not
up.
only canceling January, but also February. And
Okay.
we're anticipating a possible new committee.
That's very true
The
as well.
26th is
and the
definitely
24th.
canceled.
Okay, so transportation will not be meeting, so that will be a TBD, to be determined, as is Festival of Chimes and Lights into 2024. Councilmember Lucarelli?
Would actually like to see if we could meet briefly on the 18th. Would you be available for a debriefing on the 18th for the Chimes and Lights Committee?
I believe I'll be here. Yep.
Okay,
I will
great.
double check and let you know.
We were waiting on that a little bit, and I think that would be excellent if we could go ahead and convene then. So that
So
will,
potentially Chimes and Lights will be meeting December 18th?
yes, at our usual
Right.
time.
All right, terrific there. Land use is supposedly meeting on December 20th.
Do we have a meeting, Chair?
Do we have a meeting?
It's been,
Do we have a meeting?
I haven't heard of anything.
I believe a cancellation was sent out.
Okay.
Okay.
I didn't.
So land use will not be meeting December 20th.
Oh, yeah, there's a
Obviously, we're getting
cancellation.
close to the end of the year. Lodging tax will be determined in 2024. Sewer advisory will be meeting February 21st. And now we are to, and it's really funny that Councilmember Cucciardi's not here because he always makes fun of our mayor's report and because how long sometimes they get to be, and we don't have one tonight, so
He'll
we
save
can't
it for
take
next week.
advantage of that. So we have no report of the mayors. We do move along to the report of the department heads, and I'll start with Mr. Ryan. Do you have anything to report?
Good evening again. Yeah, just to recap, last week we saw some significant rainfall. City crews experienced some localized flooding and responded well. As a result of that, on Saturday morning, we did have a landslide that occurred on SR 166 close to Ross Point. The state responded with their geotechnical engineer, and they determined the hillside posed no threat to the roadway. They did want the shoulder of the road shut down, which you'll see the tubular markers out there. On Saturday evening, we also saw the first snowfall in Port Orchard. So we had a crew member out just doing a quick route check and no significant problems. Quick project updates, Marina Lift Station. You might have noticed that there's a lot of water out there. They're doing some line flushing as they did some connections for the new water main that's out there on site. So they are working late this evening with the dry weather. Posed a great opportunity to wrap a piece of that project up. As for City Hall, the weather vane is getting ready to go back on. So hopefully in the near future you'll see that. So we did talk about change order number 2 today. When we had the significant rains downstairs in the police department, which is pretty much gutted and empty now, as they're finalizing in the next couple months, they'll be finalizing that process. Some water intrusion was occurred. Public Works staff has been working to clean out the existing planters that are up against the windows. I'm sorry, up against the foundation of the building. There's an opportunity there that we used our crews to reduce the cost. There will be some weatherization improvements done to that foundation footing to prevent any kind of water intrusion, improve the drainage that's there existing. So that wasn't part of the original scope of the project, so that will likely be an additional change coming in the near future. Something else with the City Hall project is that we are preparing to bring to this council an agreement for design services and the ordering of the furniture. So that is the entire police department suite with all the office furniture, including the desks and chairs, as well as the rest of this building too. That portion was not funded with this project, so there will be a budget increase request coming with that. So windows have started to arrive. They are staged downstairs, so in the near future you'll start seeing what the new windows will look like at the building at the ground floor, working on their way up. That's all I have.
Dennis, it was my understanding the flooding downstairs was in part because of not having the gutters on the roof. Is that correct, or was that erroneous?
At one point, I think when I first started, there was some leaks that we encountered with the gutters. We do see some French drainage that needs improvement as we uncovered it.
Thank you.
I just have a small update. Dennis actually reminded me since you brought Marina. And so perhaps he mentioned this last time, but it's always good to mention good news again. Marina Pump Station loan, if you recall, we were on a tight timeline to spend those proceeds by the end of, I think, June of 2024. The state has worked with us and they've extended that timeline now for, I think, till 2026. So when I spoke with them, they definitely had an interest in seeing us complete this project, and they didn't want the timeline to cause us any problems for the Marina Pump Station. So that's great news for us, because again, that's a $13 million loan. Had we not been able to extend that, we would have been having some different conversations in April and May next year, kind of how do we complete the funding for this project. So that's great news.
All right, thank you, Mr. Crocker. How about you, Mr. Bond?
Yeah, just one announcement tonight. I met my counterpart with the city of Gig Harbor a couple of months ago, and we started discussing workloads, and they mentioned that they're seeing a major slowdown in building permit activity, especially inspections, and they have surplus staff capacity. So we've been exploring the possibility of an interlocal agreement, like a mutual aid agreement for building department services. And it would be something where if they have a staff that goes out, or they have an unfilled position and need assistance, we could temporarily help them. More than likely, we would need their assistance sooner because of how many consultants we're using. And so we're just having some preliminary discussions about the possibility of sharing resources and taking advantage of their temporary slowdown in activity. They're kind of between some big projects. They expect things to ramp up in Gig Harbor again in 2025, but for this next year, they're expecting to be a little bit slower than normal, and they may be able to give us some assistance in the building department. So more to come on that, probably towards the end of the first quarter next year.
Sounds good. That sounds really good. Ms. Lund, what do you have?
I have just one kind of interesting fact to share. As you said earlier, we are kind of at year end, and it was a great time for Beth to go back and look at our recruitment activities. So I don't want to give you a bunch of numbers, so I'm going to make it simple. Looking at a 3-year average, we have, and when I say we, it's 99% Beth, who happens to be in the back room tonight. It's 30 recruitments a year. So we are opening and recruiting for 30 different positions over the course of a year. And when you think about our 100-employee organization, that's a lot of recruitments. 30 includes seasonal temporary employees that we don't generally count in our employee count. But those 30 recruitments have led to, in round numbers, 20 new employees every year, not counting seasonals and temporary employees. So it's a lot of activity, not only for HR, but for all the departments that are onboarding those employees. So significant numbers I just wanted to share with you tonight.
And I think it's important to contextualize, that's because we're growing.
That is correct. Our turnover rate is actually very good. It's somewhere around 15%. These are growing numbers. I've been here just shy of 5 years, and when I look at employee seniority from longest serving to newest employee, I am literally right in the middle. So about half of the employees here have come in the last roughly 5 years, and about half have been here longer than 5 years. So, but it is about growth.
Growth and retention, they're both very important.
Pay for.
Ms. Floyd, what do you have tonight?
Nothing to report, thank you.
Okay. And not to leave her out because she's on Zoom today, Ms. Archer, how are you feeling?
Thank you so much. I am doing well. I appreciate it. And I should be there next week with you to share in person. But just briefly, I appreciated all of my colleagues stepping up and all the staff members stepping up while I was out. I am back. I did monitor or have been monitoring a number of cases relevant to the city. Just a very brief update on the Johnson versus Grants Pass case. The petitioners filed their brief with the U.S. Supreme Court. So we are expecting a decision as to whether or not the case will be taken up, likely in February. So that is moving forward. And that case, again, just to remind you, deals with limitations on agencies' ability to regulate the unhoused community when there are encampments that have formed. So I'll continue to monitor that case as well as others. And I look forward to seeing you all on the 9th.
All right, thank you for that. We are now to our second and last citizens' comment period. It's open topic period at this point, and we still have no one in the audience in person. Janine, do you have anybody online at all?
Well, we do have one person, but no hand is raised.
Still no hand raised there. Okay, so with that, I'll go ahead and close the citizen comment section. Anything for the good of the order tonight? Ms. Lucarelli.
Yes, I want to thank staff, Public Works in particular, for all the hard work done in rather short notice to put together the Chimes and Lights Festival. We had so many modifications, and a lot of the decisions were made rather last minute in how to handle the crowds and everything, and staff did a great job considering how many last minute decisions had to be made. So it was a beautiful event. It wasn't perfect, but an incredible outcome with crowds. I don't know what they numbered, but it was very well attended. And I do want to thank you for all of your hard work, especially in that it was close to some rather large events here in the city. And thank you, Janine. Janine and Brandy, but Janine has worked so hard and did a fabulous job, and everything turned out so well. So wanted to thank you.
Right, anything else for the good of the order tonight? Not hearing anything, we'll go ahead and adjourn this meeting.